Carolyn, Eric, welcome to the show. Carolyn, you are a returning guest, a
Yeah.
food and arts educator and writer. And Eric, you are a history teacher. And
Yep.
today we're here to discuss everything from representation in education to gaslighting and sensitivity. But before we dive into the heavier topics, let's start off on a more exciting note, and that's the new Shang Chi movie. I know
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
done amazing at the box office, and the reviews have been stellar.
My t-shirt can wash. I totally wore it this week. But yeah.
Yeah. No, it's very good. It's very good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Without spoiling the movie, since I know I haven't seen it yet, what can you say about the quality of the representation in Shang-Chi? Like, how do you think this changes the landscape for Asian American representation going forward?
I think it's really impactful, like that it is like an Asian driven cast and crew
And writers
and
and
writers,
directors
yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah, and it feels different from some of the films that we've gotten in the past. Like when I was a kid, like the only Asian action star that we had was Jackie Chan, and
And
he's
Bruce. Well, by
by VHS tape
by
and stuff,
VHS
Bruce Lee,
tapes
but,
with our families.
but he's as legendary as he is, he's not an Asian American. So
Bruce Lee.
Bruce Lee was absolutely.
Yes.
But to see someone else up on the screen that looks like us, and telling sort of like the same tongue-in-cheek anecdotes that we have, like as a shared experience being Asian
Yeah.
American. It's to see that on the screen, it's like, oh, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah. There was also like there were just moments. First, so we've seen it twice, and we I'll go see it again. But this was the first movie we saw basically, since this whole thing started. It was pretty much the best way to kind of go back to the movies. It was on his birthday, actually, so it was the best. It came out on his birthday, so it was the greatest celebration.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and the thing was, like, I have rarely kind of fist pumped like at the screen movies and stuff, but it was so exciting, more exciting than I anticipated it would be. I was already excited, but seeing just like a lot of the OG actors up in there, like Sai Chin, my God, I was like, it's the Bond woman. It was like she was there, Jodie Long and Benedict Wong, and like, oh my God, just like. And the one, the actor who plays Wang Bo, when he came out, I was just kind of like, oh my God, like he's teaching Aquafina how to shoot the arrows. And the truth is that we know this because we searched for that representation growing up, but it was also somebody had said. A nuance that things that we noticed the second time we saw it, my sister had noticed that they're turning the pages and reading from right to left. And so that was little things like that, where it's kind of like, it's from the respectful lens of, people who wanted to see their story told right, or as right as possible. It is technically a fantasy because it is comics and also, brought forth by Marvel, but we, even if you're not Eric is a huge comic fan and I'm a comic fan, but he's to the umpteenth degree, whereas I'm somewhat of minion.
Oh, nice.
So this was to us was just so important on a few levels, and I really wanted to interview Simu Liu for another piece, but I couldn't reach him for obvious reasons. Because he's now up way out there in the stratosphere, and I'm very happy for him. I'm very happy for all of them, and I'm hoping that they continue with realizing just how much money, if we're talking green here, just how much money it made. And because I think this is something people really found themselves to connect to, whether or not you're Asian American or not Asian. Somebody sat behind us. We had a great discussion with them about this afterwards in the parking lot, and how he was a African American man, and he talked to us about how much he loved it and how, we were kind of prepared for this, the discussion of, I feel that,
Yeah.
and we were like, okay, but no, it was
it was a good conversation.
a great conversation. And he himself said, we need more of your stories of yours out there. And I was like, and we need more stories of yours told by our people. So, yep. So there you go. Shang Chi. Keep it going, guys. Keep it going, Marvel. Anyway, we'd love to be in the next movie. I'll train. I'll do it.
So. I will not, I could be in the next movie as like someone in the background.
I'll just be the person pushing the cart, like scooping the ice cream.
The voice over the loudspeaker.
Aquafina can punch me in the face in the next movie. That's fine. No problem.
All right.
Staying on, this discussion of representation, I actually want to shift over the focus onto the nature of your work, which is education. Because as we all know, academic representation is more than just the students on the campus, but it's also the teachers, the alumni, the faculty members, the parent organizations that are involved. On top of the difficulty of creating more inclusive education, public schools in America have, especially recently, have become this deeply politicized battleground of, anti-maskers and school reopeners and anti-critical race theory trolls. So on one hand, the two of you are very much equipped to talk to your students about these issues, but on the other hand, some teachers are afraid to discuss social issues out of fear of retaliation. As educators of color who are aware that representation in school matters, how do your politics and identities inform your teaching? Like, do you put yourself out there for your students of color who need guidance? Do you insert your political views during class? Like, how does that side of you come out in your teaching?
Well, for me, being in a classroom full of middle schoolers, it's hard to keep all that separate because a lot of the stuff that, especially in the last year, that's been going on has actually been very personal and has deeply affected, both our lives, to a point where, after Atlanta in the spring, I had trouble being in class and being present in class for my students. And I even told them, like, this thing happened and, it's just, everything has just been escalating and this is what I'm feeling today. And so bear with me and we'll try to get through it. And if we can't, then we'll just call it what it is. And that's that. I try not to share too much of my political beliefs, but I think I don't do a really good job of it. Mostly because I'm super sarcastic. So if, the students that are paying attention will actually like get it and they'll say like, okay, I know what this guy's all about. And I try not to be that way all the time though, because it can, it can be interpreted a certain way, but it's interesting that like, we're experiencing all these people, who are against critical race theory when that's the way that I've been teaching since I've started teaching. It's like, yes, we have this one side and, on one side, it's like the founding fathers and they are our gods and they can do no wrong. But then the flip side is, they're talking about all men are created equal, but homeboy, you have slaves, you own people. Like, how can you be so all in on this one idea when you don't really live it? And that's the thing that, like, we have to acknowledge in our classrooms with them, the founding fathers or anyone else, or, everyone needs to get involved in World War II, but our military is segregated, and we have to really talk about that. And oftentimes it's not even me who brings it up; it's the students who bring it up in class, and we talk about it. So it's very much, things that are student driven, and they want to know about it, so they're curious, to have these things spoken about. And we do have to talk about it. How can we truly know ourselves as a country and as a people if we don't acknowledge everything that that we've experienced together, like every single bit of it, we have to acknowledge and accept those things happened. They weren't right. How can we move forward? How can we understand where we are now because of those things, and where do we want to push the narrative or create the narrative going forward in the future?
There was, I mean, he's continuing to work in schools, and I haven't been a classroom teacher for a few years now. I've been a teacher to a different capacity through my company, privately teaching, obviously cooking, art, and tutoring. At the same time, I mean, I've missed my students, I have, but I had the chance to talk to his students last year after the incident in Atlanta, the terrible incident.
And mass shooting, we can call it what it is.
Yeah, we can call it what it is, mass shooting. It was one of those things where we were shocked that how the media especially was covering it in the capacity of, you don't have to dance around it. This guy went in intentionally and did what he did. He's not, you know, we're not going to call this like, oh, he's mentally ill and disturbed and da-da. I was like, he went in with the intention to do what he did.
Yeah, to commit murder.
Yes, to commit murder. And when it was approached, especially with the kids, it was one of those things that was very questionable of, you know, why did they approach it the way that they did, so carefully and so, you know, tiptoe around like what's happening. And the truth of the matter was, I was like, you know, it was a conversation that frankly, the Asian American community in the school should have been able to lead that conversation. And they were not really invited to. It
was a whole thing.
It was a whole thing. Yeah. And it was one of those things where I volunteered. I'm constantly like trying to find a way. And I said, this is something, if it's okay with you, like, if we can talk about it with your kids, I would love to volunteer myself to help out with that.
Wow. Yeah, and we did.
And we did. And we talked about it with some of his kids. And I'll admit it was a conversation. I kind of walked away kind of almost being in tears talking to one of his kids who's Korean American. And she posed a question like, you know, what do you do if people are saying racist things to you? What do you do? This was something, you know, it's like you talk to a kid, you know, it's coming from a place where this has happened to them. And I was just, my heart was just like, you go out to that kid and you're like, I've been in your position. But from what we ended up writing a few articles about this for his school and our experience. And then the second one, I actually wrote it with you. And I was like, you know, what can we tell these kids and how can we advise them? Because it's a year later and we're still, you know,
and things have gotten worse.
Things have gotten worse. Yeah. And like, I'll admit, I can't even, like when I get on the subway now, it's like, before it was about COVID and, you know, just like even hoping you keep a mask on and stay safe. And now it's like, what's going to happen to me? And do I have to keep up my guard even more? Or do we defend the person who this is happening to? And it's, you know, I basically just, we wrote, what we made sure to write in this article was, you know, use your voice. It's a muscle. You've got to just keep using it, exercise it, learn how to use it, learn what impacts and what is intentional that you're trying to get out, and don't be afraid, because we've been taught in our cultures to be how to not rattle the cage and not make trouble and just plow through and get into excellence. And that's how you're going to live your life. We're hoping we can encourage them to do both. And it's just one of those things where we're like, look, the way that you did it worked for them. It's not working anymore. So we have to figure out what we want. And especially, you know, it's been a generational kind of difference between us and our parents and our, you know, trying to differentiate to them like why this is important. So,
and I think you hit it right on the head on, you know, this idea of speaking up being a muscle, being a skill that you have to develop. You know, sometimes people think that, you know, oh, well, I care about this social issue. I said it once. I've admitted that I'm not racist, or I admitted that, you know, misogyny is bad. But there isn't sort of a follow-up. There isn't, you know, a consistent drumbeat of, yes, like this needs to be talked about all the time. Like it is always on the plate. Um, and you mentioned something earlier about COVID, so I kind of wanted to go back that because last time we talked in 2020, we discuss the importance of being involved in your local community and sort of the simple things that you can do to help your neighbors struggling during the pandemic. And since then, a lot has obviously changed, and sadly, a lot of us have lost friends and loved ones to this virus. I'm lucky that I haven't lost anyone directly in my family, but I also know that I'm very privileged in this situation. I work from home. I have a family who's very supportive. I'm fully vaccinated, and so more than anything, like I think the pandemic really taught me just how lucky I am to be in the situation, and that like shit could have infinitely been worse.
Mhm.
When the two of you reflect on life in this COVID era, what can you say about the things that you've realized that you're grateful for, and maybe even some of the things that you didn't realize that you took for granted during the pre-COVID years?
Every day is a gift.
Yeah.
Every single day is a gift.
It sounds so
And
cliche, but it
yeah,
really is just
yeah,
we're
like,
still here.
yeah. For one reason or another, the last year and a half has been, just this kind of like crazy, weird time to experience. You know, if within the Asian community people are not getting sick, then they're getting attacked and all that other stuff. So, um, we, at least for me, I've realized, like, as swiftly as the virus and the variants are moving through different communities throughout the country, throughout the world, and just killing off a lot of people. We were fortunate that we didn't get sick. We are fortunate that we like each other enough to spend significant amounts of time in our tiny apartment together.
Your voice raised when you said that.
Okay,
I'm just saying, but
just taking a breath.
we
But yeah,
yeah.
it's just been any of anything that we've experienced together has been for the most part good experiences, and it's allowed us to really get in touch with each other and just brought us closer together.
Yeah, I would say I would honestly say that we pretty much I mean, we've been tested a very decent amount in like the last 9 years of even just being together.
Mhm.
Um, now that we've really kind of been pushed together to kind of do everything, we know how grateful we are. But the thing is, it was like, I read somewhere, and I couldn't agree with this more. Just something that I saw that was said. It was like, resilience is wonderful, but I no longer want to be complimented on my resilience. And as proud as I am of it, it's like, well, yeah, it came with needing to be able to just say, yeah, this happened, and, move on from it. And we're both still working on letting go of the things that we've become, have been accelerated in our emotions basically from being in this whole situation. I mean, truthfully, if it's okay for me to share this, like he's nervous about me going. I used to go out for walks by myself in our neighborhood just for moving around, getting out. And he's nervous about me going
Mhm.
in a lot of places by myself. Um, and it's one of those things where I'm nervous for him also when he goes out. Um, it's gotten to a point where, I'm just, can you only imagine how others have felt when they've been in this position for their entire lives
Mhm.
and just taught from an early age, like, this is how you react and this is how you handle it and this is how you, and this also kind of showed us the separate thinking that we've encountered on this level with other people in our lives. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where we're really grateful to still be here, of course. But we worry about our parents, and we worry
Mhm.
about, our other family, and we worry about our friends. And it's all, I mean, we've also had the ultimate privilege to go travel while we were doing this. Because initially we thought things were going to look much, much better by summer because the vaccination rate was going up. And so because on a personal level, we'd had such a crazy year that needed a lot of healing, not just from the pandemic, from other things in our lives. And we were celebrating also just milestones and things. And so we had planned a trip to Hawaii, and we went, and we were terrified of being on a plane for us. It takes about 10 plus hours to fly there from New York. And to be on a flight with people who we were hoping were all vaccinated, but the state of Hawaii makes you fill out paperwork to get in.
Just to land and
so we were just hoping, please have everybody been truthful in what you told them, and and we're very lucky. It came back. We got tested twice. We also had gone down to Florida at a time, which was a very interesting time to be in Florida, for a kind way to describe it. And luckily we were both tested and we're both fine, but we were abiding by the rules. We were wearing our masks. We were washing our hands. We were distancing ourselves from everybody. Can't say everybody was doing the same, but it was one thing that we thought to cancel our trip, and it was just going to cost us more to cancel the trip than it was to go on the trip. So it's we're like, it's a system we know has to change. We're hoping it does. Haven't seen it yet, but we're hoping that it does.
I mean, we were following the rules. We were wearing masks wherever we wherever we went, and I think it also helps, growing up in an Asian households where anything that you do, like, it's reinforced, like, in you, like, whatever you do, it might impact someone else. So you kind of think about that, like, and I just try to tell my students that, wearing a mask is not to protect you, it's to protect everyone else from you, as you don't know if you're ill or not ill, whatever. Even if you have a small cold, that's still, it's for everyone else's protection around you. It's not for you.
So again, it's also kind of going back to, we're discovering very interesting things about people's way of thinking in this entire time.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, no pun intended, but people have been going mask off because the revealing of priorities, kids, well, just send them back. Like, I mean, just a lot to learn over these last, this last year and a half. But moving on to the next discussion, I wanted to actually talk about sensitivity, specifically sensitivity to anti-Asian racism. Back in April, and you had mentioned this a little bit earlier, the two of you had published an opinion piece titled "1 Year Later, Dealing with Continued Anti-Asian Racism During the COVID-19 Pandemic." And in this, you had quoted Stephen Yun, who said, "Sometimes I wonder if the Asian American experience is what it's like when you're thinking about everyone else, but nobody else is thinking about you." And I think this is a really interesting quote, because I know that a lot of non-Asians who often say that, they don't know what to think about Asian people because we aren't as vocal and because we don't put ourselves out there. If you could advise non-Asian people, who want to be involved, and who, if you want to be able to sort of advise them on how to respectfully think of and support Asian Americans at this time, what would you sort of suggest? Like, how does the person with the Stop AAPI profile picture, how do they take that to the next level?
We that time that Caroline zoomed into my classroom with my advisory, we started that discussion before time ran out, just to educate yourselves on Asian culture, and also get into the mindset that Asian culture is not like a monolith. It's
right.
even, and if we just want to say like, oh well, Chinese people and Asian people, what's the difference? Like, well, China's a huge country, and within China, there's like many languages and cultures that live within it. So it does make a difference. So, yeah, I would just say educate yourselves on the people that are within your community or within your friend circle or family,
and know that there's more to know than what they're telling you.
Yeah,
and it's or even what you read on Wikipedia or whatever you read. It's just there is a degree of self-education that people have to realize is not just reading it out of a book.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where you're going to have to meet people, and you're going to have to don't immerse yourself, in their lives, but do it respectfully. And for the love of God, what happened to respect? Like, I'm going to be honest. When I started my education career, like, when I graduated college and went off to get a job, and the job that I got was in a Chabad, in a Hasidic Jewish preschool. I could not have been any more different than they were at the moment, for obvious reasons of differentiation. But at the same time, I had to respect their culture, their rules, their traditions, their possibly, but I have to respect their view on who I was as opposed to who they were. In terms of treatment, was I kind of cast aside a lot? I'll be honest. Yes, I was. I was forgotten about a lot. I was given the, for lack of better anything, I was given the bitch work to do. And there was also, anyone can say it's your first job, of course you're going to get this. No, there was some stuff going on where people who were in their community were treated obviously better than I was. But listen, it happened. It was a learning experience. I wouldn't give it back for the world. I love the children that I worked with and the friends that I did actually make on staff there. And admittedly, a lot of them were non-Judaic, a lot of us non-Judaic staff. But at the same time, I will never, ever claim that I know everything about the Jewish culture because my best friend is Jewish and I grew up in a Jewish town and had many Jewish friends in my town or blah, 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 blah. Please don't take that approach to anyone's culture, anyone's life. We're not objects. We're not, your course culture that you got because you took a course on, the Vietnam War and, oh my God, so now I know everything there is to know. No, you don't. And why don't you know? Because you're still not letting them lead the narrative. You're still getting what you got out of the book, out of this. It's something that, again, people are rediscovering what it means to self-educate and what it means to realize that sometimes, yes, we don't know. Even we in our own cultures, we don't know everything yet either. Are we extremely well acquainted with it? I'd say so.
Yeah.
But there's still some things that I still have to ask my parents about, or if I still have to ask, my friends about, because I'll be first to admit, Korean slang is still something that I'm very much out of the loop with. And, no matter how much I try to sort of get it, I'm still seeing it from my position as a Korean American growing up here. And
as like a single individual,
among
literally billions of people.
And it's not truthfully, even in media, like a lot of people jump all over anybody for, what they find is misrepresenting their, a person of culture in media. But I was like, it's not up to one person to save the world. I'm sorry, but it's not. And as much as, what I see it as is all of us kind of taking all our frustration that now we see somebody who can represent on the platform. And it's like, you got to do this, 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 this. And it's just not fair. I'm like, as disappointed as we can be, let's hope that there's somebody else who can bring the power there. So yeah, there's a lot that we still all are. We have to admit that we're all willing to learn, but the way you're going to self-educate is to also do the work by going out there.
Yeah. And if anyone has, Asian friends, don't make them like the expert in your life, because they're probably just figuring that out the same as anyone else, and everyone's individual households and upbringing is unique to them.
Similar, but not the same.
Yeah, like I don't know if I would go to any of my white friends and just start asking them like, lost questions, right? Because that's insane, right? That's crazy.
I'm not gonna ask what the WASP questions are, but
I wouldn't even know what they are. Like, I don't know. Like, do you all drink tea, like, or in the afternoon, or is that strictly an England thing? I don't know, but
oh my god,
yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's just, it's also just kind of like realizing, as I've gotten older, I've realized this more. To be honest, I'm coming to terms with the fact that a lot of it was just survival, and just a lot of it was just kind of realizing it was also might have just been a protective thing to have to think one way, and then realizing, nope, it wasn't that. And what you felt back then, yeah, that was pretty much valid, except that someone was there to invalidate that. So that's what we're hoping not to do to the kids that we work with, to even the adults that we know. Because again, we're behind. We all came from a certain set of boundaries, and now we're hoping for better everything for those who are coming after us, so that they can better things for everybody else. So it's a new way of trying to figure out the new way of thinking and how to support those who are learning about it now. So
no, and I love that, and I love what you said about the fact that there's always room to know more, and there's always space to learn. And as you learn more about other cultures, you start to learn how much shit you don't know. And so long as you just treat it as not this like oddity, this fantasy like that you hang up on your mantle, but like to just have a genuine support for other communities, and just to want to see them do great, and then to just be cheering for them on the sidelines. And so continuing on this subject, on anti-Asian racism, is the topic of gaslighting related to communities of color fighting each other. So talking about violence from white supremacy is one thing, but addressing violence and racism from within other communities of color can be just a totally different minefield. And oftentimes, in order to feel like they're being heard, one community of color might gaslight the other and say, well, you're the reason why our community is suffering, or your people didn't struggle the way that we did. And this happens in all different directions, in all different ways. But without gaslighting our own experiences as Asian Americans, and without gaslighting the experiences of other communities of color, how do you think we can collaboratively hold each other accountable? Like, so if my previous question had more to do with how individuals can sort of lend their support, this is more about how do you think communities as a whole can support each other and take this to the next level?
I think before we do any work with anybody, we have to acknowledge ourselves that we also did the wrong things, and people within our communities did the wrong things too. I remember when I was a kid, with watching on the news during the LA riots, the Asian business owners, on top of their store, just pointing their guns at rioters, and it's like, even then, it's like, you are in their community though. Your store is in their community. Like, you need to be out there, with them. You need to be handing out water. You need to be, bandaging up people, because that's your community. Those are your customers, and we need, I think we all need to acknowledge that we were, we were all fed a narrative about other people that we need to acknowledge is just not true. It was just a way to pit us against each other, by saying, well, those people are over there, they're in a sinking boat. You're over here, your boat's good. But we fail to realize that we're all in the same actual boat. Not to sound cliche, but we actually all are. And we all, have like I think a duty and responsibility to acknowledge that in the past and even in the present, that people do bad things and they say bad things, and against other communities of culture and against other people of culture and color. and I think once we can acknowledge that, and we can, I think, get over ourselves and just say, like, yes, that's something that we did and we own it.
Yeah.
Now how can we move forward? What do you need from us? How can we help you?
Mm-hmm. There's also something to be said, like, the riots were horrible, and obviously, people were trying to defend their turf, so they say, and they reacted however they reacted. We can't go back. That it happened, and again, these things are just things we're going to have to acknowledge. Were they right? Were they wrong? Why did they do it? Is that what we want for the future? And another thing that I have to acknowledge, though, is something we've both felt, which is growing up, especially. I'm Korean American, and Eric is Taiwanese Colombian American. And there were many times that we both felt that even in our own cultures, people made us feel lesser than. You're not as this enough because of the not Korean enough. You're not American enough. You're not, you don't belong because the language is hard for you, or da 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 da. And a lot of it is, I hate to say it, is also just the crab mentality of needing to excel and be the person who's up top calling the shots. And oh, for the love of God, can we all just admit that, like, again, does the responsibility have to fall on one person? And, even in my community, in the food community, and we've talked about this, where I was just like, if you're going to go on and preach that, we got to walk the walk, you can't keep excluding people from that. And, be wary, of course, that when you're in a certain position, there are things people are going to want from you. But at the same time, I've had so much of the experience of people who say, oh, we got to help each other. We got to be there for each other, da, 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 da. And then when I actually needed help and I reached out, I was given, oh, I just can't do that. But can you do this? Da, 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 da. And I'm just like, no. Yeah. I'm like, it's just not how things are going to get done. But for that said, there are people who are actively trying to do that. And we are acknowledging that, it shouldn't have to take for anyone to find some degree of success for you to see how they're trying and how they're doing it and how they're best supporting it. They're just out there doing their thing like everybody else. Mm. And I try as much as I can to basically do my part and help however I can. But that's also a little, I hate to say it, you have to find a balance. There are people who are really just there to find their way in the door, which you put your foot in. But at the same time, acknowledge and think the bigger picture of, no one's saying you got to save this person, but we are saying that to help our community, please just acknowledge, like, this is what I can do for you. I can't do this, but I can do this. And remember that you were them once, and that, what could you have possibly needed from somebody at that time? And yeah, that's pretty much what I can say. And
keep showing up. I mean,
yes.
You had mentioned before, that, we just have it as our Facebook photo, our Facebook profile picture,
the T-shirts.
Exactly.
No,
right.
It's
we that's all well and good, but I think we as a community need to consistently and constantly show up for other people, whether that's for BLM or something else. We just and authentically show up and
ask how you can help and actually do it.
Right, just follow through and just be there in support of of other people, because I think so much trust has been lost in the last however many decades of since at least maybe our parents have come to this country. That I think that needs to get rebuilt, and if it's up to us to rebuild that trust with other communities of color, then I think that's something that we need to do. And we can't just say, like, well, I did my thing and they didn't accept it, therefore I that's all I can do. It's like, you have to keep trying. You have to earn that trust back.
Yeah, I mean, people are exhausted. We're exhausted, and of course you do it however much you can. But I will bring up one example of this that actually might help anyone who might be wondering in a literal sense how this could help. So while we were traveling, we actually encountered, he was wearing his college baseball cap and somebody else was passing and they're like, hey, you know, that kind of thing. Same. Another American was passing going, hey, like, how's it going? And we were talking on the sidewalk and people were walking around us and like, you know, because there just wasn't, you know, there was enough space for everyone to pass. There was a man who passed us, a white gentleman, tall, you know, probably went running or something. And he made the remark to us, like, why don't you just get out of the way of the sidewalk? And, you know, we're East Coast people. What can I say? We when people say something, we say something back.
We went full New York on them.
So we kind of just know, because what we did was I was like, there's enough room to walk around. And he just walked away. And we all started laughing because we reacted and we're like, wow, he really, whatever. He's all sorts of extra. The man turned around and kept talking. To be honest, he was in such a distance that we couldn't really hear what he was saying anymore. We were just kind of like, and all four of us looked at him and we're like, are you still talking? Are you still talking? Like, seriously, like, please go, like, go home. And then he wouldn't leave and we're still laughing because I'm like, what are we supposed to do? Like, cry? No, this is hysterical. Like,
and I sure as heck I'm not going to apologize for using a public sidewalk.
I was like, there are lots of people walking around us. Yeah. Like, chill. Like, please. He continued to blah, blah, blah. It sounded like Charlie Brown, how the TV. It was just like, I apologize. I just kind of went, please go home and get laid. Oh my God, just go. And I was like, go. Like, please shoot. Like, I just went, I literally just kept going. I was like, shoot, go. And he eventually just left. Now, my point is that strength in numbers, please be united, because if you have, I mean, we all have our opinions, of course, but it's like, if we don't find a way to find that this is something we all agree on, how do we approach this and just do it, it's just going to get to a point where it's like, really, whose hand is bigger than whose in this fight? It's just like, we're all still in this. This is better for some people, worse for some people. It doesn't matter at this point, because if we don't find a way to just be joined on this and something we all agree on, then we're all going to suffer. So that's, I guess, my point.
Yeah, I mean, I think showing up really is the key. I mean, you know, depending on how involved you want to be in the community, there's so many different ways that you can get involved. You know, and sometimes people think that the only way to get involved is, I got to be an organizer and I need to be protesting. But like, there's, whether you're donating money, whether you are supporting a network by giving them your attention, your time, and your support, there's just so many different things that you can do for other communities. But my last question of the day actually is about responsibility and the responsibility that we have in this current political and social climate. We're living through a fascinating time in history where so many things that we've deemed normal are being turned upside down. Work culture, politics, supply chains, art, and entertainment. For the two of you, where do you see yourselves fitting in within this just sort of larger social and political revolution going on in America? Like, whether big or small, what responsibilities do you feel like you have either to yourselves or to your communities in this current era?
This is going to probably sound like really corny, but because I work with kids, as a teacher, I truly do look at my classroom as like a way that I'm building the future. So I'm part of that process where, these kids, as they're like 12, 13, 14 years old now, they're at some point in their lives, they're going to be in charge of everything. And I had to trust that I did my role as a teacher to prepare them as much as possible for that role that they have. So I would want for a future where people can just walk down the street and be okay without any worry, where anyone who gets pulled over by the police doesn't have to worry or stress about it, in the ways that some of our brothers and sisters have had to worry for their entire lives. We I think have to really think about the kind of world that we're creating now, and really try to push kids into a position of agency, where they can actually if they see something wrong, they can do something about it, or they can speak up about it, or at the very least they can recognize, and they can go up to the afterwards and say, are you okay? Can I help you in any sort of way? And I think that's the sort of world that we need, is one where people, they see injustice and like actual real injustice, not like, oh, my rights are being violated because I'm being forced to put on a mask or have a microchip put into my shoulder, whatever nonsense that people want to say. And it's like, that's not actual injustice. That's, you being stupid. But, there, when there are actual things that are happening within society, we need to trust our kids to do the right thing and to be able to push back against it, and really, try to live up to the tenets of the United States, where, it's justice for all, and everyone is equal, and we have the, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and all that other stuff. So that we had to live it. And, as a history teacher, I can honestly say that for a lot of our history, we have failed at that. But that doesn't mean that we always have to. We can always make it better. We can always be more inclusive, and we can always be there in support of each other, because it's a community of people, not of single individuals. So it's a matter of making sure that kids understand that, and that they can acknowledge it, and while they're looking out for themselves, they can look out for the people around them also.
I probably, just one of those things that I hope we can remember is that I think this is something everybody wants. This is something everybody wants, is to feel safe, secure, happy, to basically include people in that. That's completely up to them to figure out how to best do that. At the same time, it's also, acknowledge that people are not just ornamental, and we're not just here to offer you what we have from our culture, from our lives. We're not just the person on the team who can, do the best artwork, or, who basically is the smartest at crunching numbers, or the smartest at doing anything, or the boldest. It's just about trying to figure out, not based in a stereotype or even based on what we can give somebody, but really what we all want and how we can best go about that. And again, if you can pronounce Schwarzenegger, and if you can pronounce
Cumberbatch,
Favreau, any of these other names that we've all had to, own at this point in American culture, you can learn how to say Caroline Choe. You can learn how to say Eric Cadena. And yes,
or Zhang, or Nguyen, or the myriad of other names out there that people constantly butcher all the time.
Yes. So, and that's basically it. And also, try new food. That's all I'm gonna say. Yeah. Try new food, and we said this before. It's just like even with food and people, it's just, you don't gotta be best friends with anybody. No one's forcing you to do that. However, we are asking everybody to just acknowledge that this is something we all have to be together on. Again, we're not here to, to basically destroy or determine anybody's worth. Just basically, we are here to live, and that's how we want to do it.
And we have to acknowledge that everyone does have worth.
Yep.
Yeah.
And once we decide that some people don't have it,
that's where we fail.
Yeah,
a lot.
So
not we, but just
society.
Society.
So
but
yeah, and everyone, I think, has a personal responsibility to stand up to oppression and injustice, and to ask if people are doing okay. I mean, when all this stuff was and it's still happening. Every time that there was something that was on the news, someone was, a person of the Asian community was robbed or shot or something like that. Just to get all the emails and text messages and phone calls. Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? It's like,
do you really want to know how we're doing, or do you want are we okay right now? Yeah, I mean, we're sitting at home safe, but are we okay?
And we appreciate it, but it's also, for us, the response being our responsibility I think within within the the country as it is now. I think we just have to keep doing our best, trying to ensure that we leave the world better than how we found it, and
do the work to make it so.
Yeah, and actually, just do the work. Don't say, "Oh, I'm backing this thing," or "I'm in support of this," or.
And on that note, there are a lot of organizations that are very actively trying to do this with the community. So please seek them out. Again, another self-education point. Please seek them out. Ask how you can help, whether financially or at least on a proactive level.
Yeah, if you can't donate, give time, and your effort.
And just be kind.
Yep.
Be kind. Why is that so hard these days? I don't know.
It costs nothing to be kind, and it takes nothing away from anybody. Right. For a man to be kind to anyone does not mean that his testosterone level goes down, right? So,
yeah, and it's you talking about earlier about not wanting to or not feeling like you have to shoulder everything for yourself, and feeling like you have to take on all these responsibilities all on just yourself, because no one person can save the world. And I think that really just goes back to just this overall conversation about the importance of community and recognizing like you're not the main character. You're in this space with everybody else. And so I really appreciate that message, because I think that especially now with everything in the way that so many different things within our culture have changed and become so deeply politicized and competitive, like you said, it's just kindness can sometimes feel like it's such a rarity in an era where we feel like we need to sort of hoard that kindness only for our people and only for the people who we feel like need it. But Carolyn, Eric, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Before we say goodbye to our audience, what are you both working on, and where can the LLAG community find and support you?
I'm working on just trying to get through this first month of school, so that's where I'm at, just trying to figure out curriculum and deciding how I'm going to teach one thing one day, and then that's
I do want to tell my students I miss you very, very much, and I hope that we'll be back together soon, safely, and able to do our work together. But for now, I've been lucky enough to still be writing from here, and also doing recipe work from here. Zoom has been our partner, in this whole thing and trying to make it so. But you can find me at www.createandplay.com. I'm also on Instagram at Cho, at Create and Play, and at the Exploratorians. And you might see more activity on some than others at the moment, but again, I'm only one person, guys. If I had 8 arms, I could make lots of things happen. But we also wanted to thank you, because you keep your voice heard and you keep saying what you're going to say, whether or not that, is anything that you think is going to offend anybody, but it is stuff that you put out there, not as so much what you think is the defining truth of what things are, but you leave it up to people to discuss. And that's what we continue to support you for. So
yeah.
yes.
I mean, yeah, yeah, I think just said it. It's like it's a muscle, and the more we see people within our community flexing that muscle, I think it'll be more encouraging for other people to flex it too. I mean, we all have or had grandmothers who didn't care, what people said, and they would just like start yelling at people about this or that, whatever, in the grocery store. So, if they could do it, the rest of us can.
I will not be yelling at any grocery stores anytime soon. I'll have my mask on. So
there you go.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and on that note about flexing that muscle, that is the main objective of this show. To teach other people that like we can bring folks from the community and have a robust conversation about these difficult conversations, and it's these are conversations that can feel intimidating to sort of approach, but to actually come on here and for you to come here a second time and to go for round 2 and do another hour, it's
Sure.
bold of you, and I love that you both came on, and I'll definitely love to have you come back on again sometime, but I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah, and the movie.
And we'll definitely watch the movie. I'll definitely watch the movie. All right, everybody. Bye.
Take care.
Take care.